Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ian Mann, and I'm joined on the panel today with Ms. Gail Anderson and Mr. Mike Colatruglio. The Assessment Department personnel is Merrick Froelich, and the administrative personnel today is Fran Picoto. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act and the City of Winnipeg Charter. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for both items on the docket today. The session will close after all of the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 and 2 on our docket today. But Ms. Picoto, before I deal with the order, would you please affirm both the assessor's and the applicant's testimony?
Okay. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Merrick Froelich.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
2 items on the docket today, as you're aware, gentlemen, and Ms. Anderson too, of course. I was directing my comments mostly to Mr. Froelich and to Mr. Neufeld. Same property, dealing with different assessment years. I'm proposing, and discuss this with both Ms. Anderson and Mr. Colatruglio, proposing to deal with item number 2 first, which predates or is the earlier assessed value. There is some evidence of which we're aware that may be admissible with respect to one property that is not admissible as a result of the timing and the post-reference application of the evidence. So if we can deal with number 2 on the docket first. The street address, of course, is number 1 Warman Road, and the file number I have for that is 245190. Mr. Froelich, I know we're dealing with it out of order, but do you have that file handy?
Yes, I do. Just let me bring it up here.
Okay.
And yep, I am ready to proceed.
Then I would ask that you please introduce the property and provide your evidence on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. File number is 24590. Roll number is 06051772000. Assessed value that we have for this property for 2024 is $15,054,000. Property is industrial light manufacturing. There's 3 buildings on this property. They're all they're 1 story, but there is a mess space in one of the buildings. Originally built was 1997. And subsequently, there was a supplemental appeal for this property that was built in 2023. Wall height varies from 14 to 28 feet. Fireproof structural steel frame construction, zoning M3. Land areas, we have 1,030,407. And we have a leasable area of 240,493. We're asking for this value to be confirmed. The mailer was not completed. However, there was due to a change of ownership, which is why we're not asking for non-compliance. On page 2 of my brief, here's the sale history and request for information. As you can see, they did complete the 2020 mailer for us on July 29th, 2020. And we did not receive income and expense mailers in 2019 and 2020. I blocked out the sale of the change of ownership, but if you take a look at the sales history, this is a unique property, and every owner who has sold it in the past has different motivations. So you can see the fluctuation in the sales over the years from 2020 to 5.9 million to 2018 at 11 million, 2015 at 5.1, and then in March of 2001, 15.8. The original pictures that I have here from in this property is what we found from other sales listing. I have not inspected this property, but my colleague has some pictures of the interior of the new building and continuing forward, and Mr. Neufeld will provide some pictures as well. So on the bottom of page 2, this is the original building, and then the new building pictures that I have here are on page 3. And so these are the outside of the furniture transfer company, and this is why the supplemental took place. So essentially, both buildings are around 120,000 square feet each. And I got some additional exterior pictures on page 4, and just a different angle of the gate. And this is the view off of Panicked. And then on page 6, you can see the new building that comes into existence here. As you can see, great ceiling height, clean, very, very well lit, a quality product. Property location is in the northeast quadrant of the city of Winnipeg. It is on the corner of Lagimodi and Wareham, but the best references is if you're ever traveling over the bridge that separates St. Boniface and Elmwood Transcona, it will be on if you're traveling north, it'll be on the northwest side of the property. On the bottom of page 7, you can see where the location is. You can see the original building here. You can see the brand new construction that took place in the past couple of years. And then subsequently on the building on the northeast corner, that's a greenhouse. That's included as an extra structure and building. Subject photos continue on page 8, and just different views on page 9. Here are the pictures of the greenhouse. And now on page 11 of my workup, or yes, page 11. So what we have here is we have 2 PIDs. We have the standard PID of 222,463 square feet at $4.33. And then we have a storage mes area of 18,030 square feet, and the respective rents are $433 and $585. I actually believe that I think we were undervaluing the rent for this property based on my knowledge of buildings that have been built in the 21st century. And so, but I'm here to present the value that we have today. Continuing forward with our property value, we have a gross potential income of $1,068,741, utilizing 4% vacancy, 3% expenses, and a $380 shortfall for the 2024 assessment. Our net operating income is $958,175, utilizing a cap rate of 6.55%. Our capitalized value is $14,628,000. Added that with the $425,000 for the greenhouse, we come up with a value of $15,054,000. So what I've done here is I've made this into 2 different groupings because the challenge is whenever you find buildings that are north of 100,000 square feet, we don't have a lot of rents, but these are some of our older inventory rents that we have for larger old comparables. So I got a property on Sony Place, Redwood, Regent, and King Edward. The effective year built for these buildings, well, starting first, the leasable area go from 111,000 square feet to 228,000 square feet. Ceilings range from 15 feet to 34 feet. The effective year builds are our oldest is 1966, and our newest is 1990, and our rents range from $5.95 to $8.96. Rent comparables for newer warehouse space, and these are for areas that are all built in the 21st century, because we have the brand new building that was 120,000 square feet, and the original building was built in 1997. And we got properties in St. Boniface that are all newer stock and inventory in the St. Boniface area in Northwest Winnipeg. And these areas vary in size from 49,991 to 148,263. Wall heights range from 24 all the way up to 38. And these are newer effective year built properties. And when you see the rents for these properties here, you can see why I was wondering why our rent was so low with regards to the 466 that we're using. Our capitalization rates are on page 13. And here's some permits that we have on place here. So this is the permit that took place in October of 2023. This was the building of 120,000 square feet. And this is just another version of the occupancy. This is the actual, I believe this is the actual occupancy permit. Yep. And then on page 16, the link here. This is the replacing of some of the floor. On page 17, some additional pictures on page 16, on 18. The new permits. This is the permit for the greenhouse, which is 16,000 square feet, and that's on page 19. And here's some pictures of the building addition of where it took place here, and this is just showing what the original building was and where the new expansion was, and you could tell that in the previous pictures from the roof. Here's some floor plans that we have, and on page 23, this was a supplemental notice that showed the change of assessment from 7.2 million to 15,054. And here's the application from the applicant, and I am open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Neufeld, have you any questions?
Yes, I do. Just two points before I start this. I should have mentioned them at the outset, but he went right into it. Firstly, I think we only submitted one valuation for both years. Is that correct? One brief?
Just a moment. I know I've looked at both briefs. I think there was some minor changes in them.
Okay.
Let me confirm that.
The valuations are different, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, there are.
Okay, so that's my problem, because I only can find in our files the one, so I might need a second or two to find it. The second is an unusual situation, and I sent in yesterday something called qualifications, my background is fairly extensive on environmental matters, and I am not looking to be called an expert as an expert witness's valuation, but I am looking to be deemed to be an expert on environmental matters and their impact on real estate as an accredited appraiser. And now I know that this is a very rare occurrence at the Board of Revision, but I've had some unfortunate experiences this year, and I've discussed these with Merrick, and the situation is that I don't want to go out on a limb and tell you I'm the authority on the world, but I just want to keep us on the facts as far as environment goes. And you can do what you like on that, but I just want you to bear in mind that I am asking for some leeway on expertise on this particular matter. That's it. So in regard to questions, firstly, I take it that You never inspected this property yourself?
That's what I said during my presentation in Mr. Neufeld.
Oh, okay. And hasn't any assessor inspected it?
You know what? We have one picture there. I believe so, but I didn't follow up with her because she was the one who put it on the roll. And so I don't know where she acquired the picture from. So I can't comment if she inspected the building or not.
What picture was that one?
That was the picture that I had of the open floor space. Let me just go up here.
That the one on page 6?
Probably.
And this
Yeah.
is, I was there yesterday. This is the new space then, right?
That's what I said. Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have no pictures of the old space. Just
Okay.
what it was in the only pictures I have of the old space will be in my brief for 2025 because that was the sales listing.
But those pictures on page 5 were also taken by someone in your office, I take it, because it's inside a car?
I don't know 100%, Mr. Neufeld. So they could have been provided by the property owner.
Okay.
I can't comment on something that I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just trying to understand, like, for example, page 4 shows pictures of loading docks. Those are in the new section, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So would these been taken, and I see that the top picture on page 4 is taken from inside, or both were taken from inside a car. So I don't know if that's government issue car, but I take it somebody has done a drive-by of some sort?
Well, yeah, I live in the neighborhood, Mr. Neufeld, so I'm familiar with the property.
Yeah, but that wasn't the question.
From an external point of view, right?
Yeah. Okay, so somebody has, okay.
So,
And-
well, to me, if I drive by, that's not officially an inspection in my eyes. I know different people have different definitions of inspection.
No, I understand. I wasn't calling it. I was just saying, someone has, I just want to know the extent of the investigation. That's all. And on page 2, so this is for the 23 appeal with a reference date of 21. Are you putting any weight on the sale of March 16th, 2020? Perhaps on a rate per square foot?
No, because then if I do that, then I'd have to put weight on the sale of 2018. And every buyer's every buyer and seller is motivated for different reasons. And so how I look at this, it's like if a person's buying a $2 million home, sometimes people will pay a premium for it. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes the seller is really motivated to sell it. Sometimes they're not motivated. This property was vacated for a long period of time, but obviously if he wanted to get rid of it sooner, he could have, but he wanted to sell the property for what he thought was fair. And that's my guess.
Well,
but the point is, I'm just speculating here, but I know there's a lot of variety in the sales history for this property. And so,
yeah, I guess you know where I'm going with this. We have 3 sales here, and to come up, we have a 4th. So, I'm just asking if you're not putting weight on it for the 2 $5 million sales. Are you putting any weight on the sales at all?
Well, the point is, it's there for information, and here we're dealing with a situation where you had knowledgeable buyers and knowledgeable sellers, and there's a loan in place for this property and this is, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, Mr. Neufeld, because I'm speaking about post-reference information, and I don't want to do that.
Okay.
But to answer your question, though, so when we're looking at this, I would put an equal amount of weight on so we got 4 sales here on the 2 $5 million sales, and I put an equal amount of weight on the 2 $11 million, $15 million sales.
Yes, and I'm just that's what I'd like to clarify now, but we can get into this on the next one if you want to discuss this. And what is you mentioned the concept of knowledgeable seller, knowledgeable buyer. On these 3 sales you presented as evidence, do you have any information to dispute or validate those comments?
Well, the point is, I've been doing commercial assessment for a significant amount of time, so I do have some exposure to different sales and different reasons. I've provided information in the 2025 brief with regards to the sale. I didn't do any extensive investigation for the previous sales.
Okay. So the answer is no, you have no information to either validate or discredit them as market-based sales then.
I have no, I'm not going to speak, I'm not going to speak out of turn for something that I don't know.
Okay, good. I'm just putting in, that's all I wanted to know. Now, just for the board's information, the assessor and I have had some discussions on this, and I've told him that we're going to confine ourselves to three rather distinct points, and I'm going to ask just questions on those. They are the value of the mezzanine, the value of the greenhouse, and the capitalization rate. In regard to, let's see, I'll take this in order. The mezzanine area, so no one has inspected it?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have no information on what's up there, what it's being used for of any sort?
Just based on the pictures that you provided me yesterday.
Yesterday, okay, good. And so in what is your support for deeming it to be rentable then?
Well, it has value to the organization, right? And so when I look at it, obviously it has a use and it has a reason for its existence. And so it's a storage area of some sort where they store materials, I'm gathering. I'm not an expert with regards to the operations of the business. But how I look at that is that it adds value. So that's why we should document it as adding value. It's just like you and I have had this argument before with regards to basement storage space. And the point is that if they didn't have that space, then they would have to utilize another service to store their inventory. So to me, the mezzanine space has value, and that's why we've added value to it.
But you said value to the organization in your response, correct?
Well, but it's usually to the organization or any potential buyer or seller of this property. It's an asset. So it's just like if you're looking at, if you have two properties that are exactly the same, and I always talk about a residential perspective. If one has a garage and one doesn't, obviously there's value in the garage. If you have two warehouses and one has a mezzanine space and one doesn't, obviously there's going to be value with the mezz space, which is why we place the value on it.
And are you familiar with the difference between use value and market value?
Well, I don't know it verbatim. I could estimate, I could take a guess, but it's not in my evidence, so I'm not going to, I can't speak of it.
Okay. And when this sale was reported at, and we have a system which I forgot the password for called Keystone Matrix. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am.
Do you know what they put for the improved area?
No, I didn't. I don't usually have access to that.
Okay. And
but I'm familiar with it. But the point is, I didn't do any research with regards to the Keystone.
Okay. And are you familiar with the standards of measurement employed by brokers who are certified with the Securities Commission?
I'm not, but with further to your question, when it comes to the square foot area, and let me just clarify this for a sec. So in our workup, we have 18,000 square feet of sea storage or storage and mezz space. I believe the original listing that you'll see in my brief for 2025 has 120,000 square feet. So that would include the main parcel and the mezz space. But we could talk about that in the next for next year's cycle.
Yes, but that wasn't the question. The question was, are you aware what the standards are for real estate?
I think I answered that, Mr. Neufeld.
Okay, but you said something else.
I said it's not in my evidence.
Okay, that's fine. I'm moving on.
I don't want to misspeak, and I don't have the textbook in front of me, Mr. Neufeld.
To your knowledge, is the mezzanine space have plumbing?
I can't comment on that because I haven't inspected it.
Does it have electrical service?
Similar to my last answer, sir.
I know, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Does it have HVAC, independent HVAC?
Well, it's a part of one economic unit, so having independent HVAC would be redundant.
And is it separately demised?
My guess is no, but it's a part of the economic unit of the property.
Is it finished?
Based on your pictures, it doesn't look finished, but it's a storage warehouse.
On page 11, why does it have a higher rental rate than the main floor?
Economies of scale.
So there were no quality considerations taken into account here?
Well, we just have it as average because we haven't inspected the property.
Okay, what's the ceiling height of the main building?
Well, I would have to double check.
Approximately.
Well, I'm not, if I can't answer, I think
Well,
just
okay,
give me 1 second.
you've got an answer on page 1, I believe. 14 to 28.
Well, I know the first building was, just give me 1 sec here. You know what? Yeah, everything's on page 1. So I thought I had additional information, but I did not write that. So just bear with me for a sec. So we have from 14 feet to 28 feet.
Right. So 14 would be the office, correct?
Yes, I'm
And
assuming so.
28 is the warehouse. And
Yeah.
how high is the mezzanine space?
I almost feel that this is badgering because Mr. Neufeld knows I haven't inspected this property. So how does he ask the question?
Well, okay,
I'm just going to get you both to stop for a minute, please. Yes, we understand that Mr. Frolick has not investigated, has not inspected the property. That goes a long way to answering all of the questions. I don't think, given that, Mr. Neufeld, you have to continue any further along the lines to say, we know that the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, the heights of ceilings has not been inspected, and we'll take that into account when we hear your evidence.
I'm going somewhere with it. One last question. Given that the subject is probably 28 feet high and the mezzanine is half or less than half of that height, wouldn't the value of a mezzanine level be lower than the main floor because of the lack of ceiling height?
To answer that question, it's almost like if we're looking at the office space for this property, we're valuing it as one area. So there are areas within this building here that have nicer office space and shouldn't be valuing that at a higher level as well. So these are the rents that we have. So, if you want to put a premium on mezz space and have a lower rent there, that's fine. But in other regards, we could have the office space renting at more than twice than what we have.
Sorry, I mean, again, you're going off base here. Isn't the
No, I'm just saying
of
an
industrial building?
You asked the question,
yeah,
and I believe I've answered it. You're looking to say, shouldn't the mezz space be a lower rent because the ceiling height's lower? And then my response is, if that's the case, then shouldn't we put a premium or a higher rent for the office space that's a part of this building here? So
Again,
I've answered this property.
And Mr. Frolick, Mr. Neufeld, I think we've explored this to the fullest possible extent. Mr. Neufeld will have evidence, I'm sure, with respect to the ceiling heights, the use of the mezzanine, and the questions that he's asking. I think your evidence with respect to the that it hasn't been inspected and that you can't answer some of the questions, then we'll be left with Mr. Neufeld's evidence on that.
Oh, okay. I'm moving on to the greenhouse. This is sorry, actually I have a question before that. I'm looking at all these permits, and none of these have a project value except for the demolition and the greenhouse. Is this am I missing it on here?
No, usually these are just summaries. Sometimes we have permit value, sometimes we do not.
Okay,
That's
that's fine.
dependent upon the person who does the application.
And now on this permit, page 19,
Okay.
it
just give me a second.
specifies that under the description that it's construct new greenhouse for growing and cultivation of cannabis. Is that a rather specific use?
I have no experience with greenhouses.
Okay.
So this is what they filled out on the permit. I don't know what other potential uses they may or may not have.
Okay. And sorry, and I take it that it goes the same issue. No one's inspected this greenhouse.
That's correct.
Okay. Your outside pictures. I know we discussed this yesterday, but I'm looking at your outside picture on page 18, and then there's another one on page 10. The one on page 10 shows 4 containers. These came from different dates? Do you know which are the dates?
I can't, I could do some research to take a look at when we had these, but I don't know. It's just they're good pictures of the property, right? One is macro, one's zoomed in. So I don't have the dates. No.
Yeah, well, no, I can see that page 18 doesn't have the pods, and I was just curious if why they weren't here is and
yeah, we're not valuing the pods, Mr. Neufeld, so I don't know.
No, I know, and I sorry, take that back, because the top picture on page 18 has no pods. The bottom picture does.
Sorry, Mr. Neufeld, you're referring to page 18. My page 18 is a permit. Which page 18 are you referring to?
Oh, just a sec. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong report.
I think we should all be on the same page.
No, reference date 2021, assessor's page. It's right after the permits. 18.
Okay, I'll refresh. I had a different number, so sorry. Let me refresh. It could be my error. Okay.
The
page 18. Okay, yes, page 18. Yes, it's refreshed, and page 18. Yes, I see the picture now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering. The top picture shows no pods. The bottom picture shows pods. They're upside down. And I'm just wondering if you don't have dates on these pictures. I take it, I'm just trying to clarify this. Both appear to be post-edition pictures, or am I getting that wrong too? Yeah, they do.
You know what? And that could be the case. I made one standard B for both of them, so
it's fine.
That could be very well the case, Mr. Neufeld. But it comes down to the fact it's not like we're putting these trailers on the income report. So that's why I'm saying
it's just clarification of evidence. And do you have any information on the construction style of these greenhouses other than what you're showing on page 19?
Nope.
Okay. Are they insulated, to your knowledge?
I don't have any knowledge.
Okay, that's fine. Now moving to the last topic, being the capitalization rate. Is the rate that is indicated on your page 11 generated by the model?
That's correct.
Does the model at any point in its system allow for an input for environmental issues?
No, it does not. But a lot of industrial properties have contamination issues with regards to it. So No,
Sure.
it does not.
What is it in use for, the subject property?
We have it listed as a storage warehouse.
Yes, but I'm not putting you on the spot, but you are aware of the business they conduct in the site
You've told me it was a transfer depot
for which
for
product?
chemical products, for chemical
Okay.
products.
Specifically herbicides, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when did this usage begin?
I would just, if I looked at the occupancy permit, that would be my best guess, but I'm only speculating, so
Sure, that's what I was looking for. It's the occupancy permit, which is May 15th, 2024.
that's correct.
Okay. And I take it you have no further information than on their use at all then.
That is correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
Yes, thank you. In regards to the environmental issues that have just been noted, I'm wondering, has there been anything identified on the certificate of title?
You know what? I don't recall, and I do not. You know what? We'll have the certificate of title, or we'll have a summary of it on the next brief.
Okay.
On the 2025. I can't comment on it now, so I'll take a look at it. But I don't think so. But I don't want to misspeak either.
Okay. Thank you. On your page 19, that is the permit detail for the greenhouse. Can you advise what the declared construction value is?
Well, it looks like, if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like $1.75 million.
Okay.
Or is it 17 million?
It looked to me like $1.75 million. That's
Yeah, that's what I see. Yeah.
And so following the construction of the greenhouse, there hasn't been an inspection with regards to this building permit to verify
No.
that the work is concluded? Okay.
No, it has not been, no. Mr. Neufeld told me yesterday he was inspecting the property, but time constraints and other commitments didn't give me the opportunity to inspect it.
Okay. So the valuation that the department has placed on the greenhouse, $425,000.
That is correct.
How's that calculated? Can you just go through
That's
that?
using the cost approach.
Okay.
And we have it as the cost approach as a detached structure.
Okay. And so to calculate the 425,000, how did you calculate it?
Actually, if you give me a sec, I will give you the breakdown. You know what? It's funny, when I was working on this yesterday, because, okay, unfortunately, I could run a report, but I could give you the 2025, and you could just just do a reduction here. So when I did the 2025 cost report yesterday, what we have is 18-foot height, 1-story area, which is 15,876 square feet. Effective year built is 2011. We put base cost for metal, for space heaters, and there's an adjustment, a foundation adjustment. So that's just the total. And so our replacement new was 931. Factoring depreciation of 40%, we came up with 532.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Coltrubio, questions?
Thank you very much. I'm just curious. it appears, and what I heard from one of the questions from Mr. Neufeld was it is a herbicide storage depot, correct?
Yes,
And yet we have a greenhouse on site that appears to be built for the purpose of growing cannabis. Is that correct?
yeah, the cannabis was the previous ownership, so that building's still there. It was never torn down. I don't believe furniture transfers using that in any way, shape, or form.
Do you figure it's just vacant at this point, that
It's
area?
just, yeah, it's obsolete. Mr. Neufeld will share this information in this presentation.
Okay. And is this property listed on the environmental list as being contaminated? Do you know?
I do believe so, yes.
All right. Do you know if it's been remedied, sir?
No, usually, there's a unique situation that I've provided as well. It's just that, well, depending upon the property, it hasn't, to my knowledge, it hasn't been remediated.
Fair enough. Those are my questions for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. I have a couple of questions just following up on Mr. Colatruglio's. The greenhouse, it was constructed, at least according to the permits, which were issued in 2020 for the 16,000 square foot greenhouse, presumably completed, and now it's obsolete. Is that what I'm hearing from your evidence?
That's, well, the current owner is not using it. And this is based on a conversation that I had with Mr. Neufeld yesterday, and he'll have pictures to show in his brief.
Okay, and so the depreciation rate from using the cost approach is 40% over the.
Yeah.
Now, is that 40% from 2020, or is that because 40% of 1.75 million?
Well, so no, I think it's based on CoreLogic or Marshall Swift.
Right.
This is where we get our documentation from. So it's not based on the permit value. It's based on what we have internally.
Okay. As far as the physical makeup of the buildings, the 1997 construction is 120,000 square feet. That's the evidence?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And the new building constructed in 2023 is also 120,000 square feet?
That's correct.
And the new building is it the new building that has the 18,000 square feet of mezzanine space?
No, it's the original building.
The original building. Okay.
Yeah.
So that original building is 102,000 square feet plus 18,000 square feet of mezzanine.
That's what I'm speculating, because in the next presentation, you'll end up seeing a sales listing showing 120,000 square feet before the new construction.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of the entire building before and after. Now, the land plan area for this on your workup here is 4.28. So the total land area is just over 1 million square feet.
That's correct. I think 1,076,000, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Just let me have one moment, please. The date of the occupancy permit for the new construction was 2023. Is that
May
correct?
of 2023, yes.
May of 2023. Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Neufeld, your evidence, and you indicated that you had some, I guess, a resume or a list of qualifications that you wish to.
I just want to go back and just quickly clarify something on the permits. Just a question that the board member raised. In regard to these permits and their pages 15, 16, 17, and I think 19, there's a code in front of the top left corner of every one. And I take it for example, page 16 OC means occupancy permit.
That's correct.
And so this is May 15th, 2024 occupancy approved.
Yeah, but we use the September 24th effective date for the building. So
Yeah,
it
no,
shows,
that's fine.
shows you how generous we are, Mr. Neufeld.
No, you're always trying to second guess me. Don't worry about it. And what the one of the board members asked about the greenhouse, and that's page 19. So
Yeah.
you do not have an occupancy on the greenhouse, do you? This is MP, so this is the main permit for construction. It does not appear they've ever closed this permit, have they?
I would have to take a look. But the point is, like, sometimes with closing the permits is when we would have licensed that section for BA at the time. And so I'm only speculating, but the point is, it's just that maybe the greenhouse would have been a part of the
Well, sorry, this only came up after I looked at it yesterday, and I'm giving evidence here, but I don't think it's complete. So do you have any proof that it was ever closed?
Just give me a sec here, Mr. Neufeld. So that permit date was in 2018?
2020.
2020.
May 7th, 2020.
Yeah, we got a permit closed for of November of 19.
Well, that's before it's issued.
Yeah, and so yeah. Well, no, when was the permit taken out, Mr. Neufeld?
May of 2020.
For the greenhouse?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it was closed because
well, it's called Building B, correct?
I do believe so, yes.
Yeah, and I'm on the city occupancy permit site, and I see no occupancy permit on it.
Well,
so
I could
know if there is one.
Well, the point is, it's just they may have not taken out one, but the point is, we closed out the main building.
Yeah, the main building, there's no dispute. It was closed out, and they have an occupancy permit issued May of 2024.
Yeah.
The question is on the greenhouse. No closing a permit, no occupancy permit, correct?
Well, and we don't have a record of them, the property owner taking out an occupancy permit.
Okay, that's fine.
So how do we have one? It's not like we initiate the process.
No, but again, I'm just looking to see if you had any proof that the building permit was closed.
Well, and I do, and you said it yourself, it was closed.
No, for the main building. I'm talking about the greenhouse.
Yeah, I think we've got the evidence on this. We don't have to
the
keep going
greenhouse
back
is
and
closed,
forth with the
Mr.
you said.
I thought you just said that.
Yes.
No, it says because it's called an MP.
Mr. Neufeld, Mr. Froelich, I think we're gone as far down this road as we need to go with respect to the occupancy permit. We can take the evidence and make a determination from the evidence that we have.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry. Back to your original question, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify that. But the qualifications thing, again, it's not something I want to be necessarily say I know everything about it, but you can see I have about well over 20 years of experience in dealing with buildings impacted by environmental issues.
I should interrupt you, Mr. Neufeld. We do not have a copy of that letter in front of us.
Oh, okay.
That'd be classified as at least late evidence. Before we determine whether we're going to review that, we should hear a little bit more about it. What is and you started to get into that. I'm just interrupting you because we don't have a copy of it in front of us. Well, what is the purpose of this?
The purpose of it is that probably in our business, appraisal business, there are very few people who are really get into this sort of business of environmental issues. I'm head of Collier's National Special Projects, which in all across Canada. So this is my area of practice. Not surprisingly, it's not tax appeals. This is a hobby, more like. But I've spent the last few months, for example, valuing aerodromes and the environmental issues. So I'm going to be saying stuff about the environment, and I just want the board to understand this is not coming from a anecdotal basis or an informal basis. This is the result of some experience, and again, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but I'm not speculating or making any sort of casual remark on these issues. Now, I'm also mentioned I couldn't find my original workup. I have one worm in 2025. I didn't prepare these, so let me just see if I have it in a different place. One Orman Sup 2024. That's not it. Anybody know what is there a name on this file? Any chance?
I didn't see one.
Which file are you referring to, Mr. Newman?
Yeah, the 2023 filing that was made for Colliers.
2023?
Or 24.
Sorry, yeah.
I don't, and you mentioned, Mr. Coltruglio, that there were differences to 25. I can't find it, and that's our system is, I have somebody else preparing these briefs, and you never put them in my folder.
Mine are the same.
I think they are the same because your page 1 is 2024 and 2025 reference. You've got the assessments of 2023 and 2025.
Okay.
With different amounts, but it appears to be the same document.
Okay, all right. All right.
Anyway, dealing with going back to the preliminary matter, am I to understand that you would like us to read the qualification document in before you testify, so that before you provide your evidence, so that we can give it an appropriate weight, or would you prefer that we look at that after your evidence and determine the weight that should be given your evidence after reading that?
I would just ask you to read it, and you can make your determination of when and the weight that you're going to give to it. I don't want to keep beating this thing for time. And if you had questions on it, it's your decision. I have no preference.
Mr. Froelich, have you seen this letter? Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, his letter with regards to his qualifications. I'm not going to discount Mr. Neufeld's experience with regards to dealing with environmental issues over the years. So I didn't look at it, but I have no issues with him presenting that information.
Okay, perhaps what we'll do is we'll take a short recess.
Okay.
Ms. Picoto, can you distribute that letter, please, to the both to Mr. Froelich and to the panel members, so that we can have a quick look at it and discuss, and then we'll come back and hear your evidence, Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Picoto. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. The panel has considered the qualifications letter submitted yesterday by Mr. Neufeld, and we are going to allow that letter to form part of the record. Mr. Neufeld, we should be clear that we are not granting you the designation as an expert or qualifying you to provide expert opinion evidence on general matters such as contamination and rehabilitation of sites. We certainly acknowledge your experience, and you can certainly refer to this vis-a-vis this property, but the weight to be provided, those matters will remain with the board.
Thank you. That's just a little bit unusual that I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
I do have a question though.
Yes.
So Mr. Neufeld talked about it yesterday, and Mr. Neufeld also provided rebuttal pictures. Are those going to be included as well as evidence?
We haven't dealt with the rebuttal evidence as yet. I wasn't aware that there was rebuttal evidence because we don't see that until that is dealt with. The order of operations is such that the rebuttal evidence will be advanced after the applicant's presentation, if there is any rebuttal. So we can deal with it there. Mr. Froelich, have you any rebuttal evidence?
I actually
warned
just a letter that Mr. Neufeld and I talked about it, but it's just like the pictures that Mr. Neufeld took yesterday.
So then let's hear the presentation. Let's hear Mr. Neufeld's presentation, continue with the questioning, and after that we can deal with the issue of the process on rebuttal. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Yes, thank you. So as I go through this, I hope I don't get the versions mixed up, because I haven't seen a difference here in the years. But on my first page, we have, 24 and 25 combined. I see it there. Yeah, it's. I think on a property like this, we think that there's really no market change is no market-based change on these sites. With unusual large properties, they're selling on a different a different concept of value in that it's mostly, if a user needs a big building, he'll pay for it. If a vendor has a big building, he'll not get paid for it. Depends who the seller and the buyer is. Can you match them up? And it moves less with the market. So was our main reason for keeping these as one value. We're using 222,463 square feet, which is the plan area. This is the appropriate measurement, and this is what the Appraisal Institute would require us to do. This is what the Securities Commission Exchange would require brokers to do. This is the appropriate methodology. The mezzanine level was constructed for one reason, and that was to hold refrigeration equipment when this was Canada Packers' site. And with the subsequent changes in use, the refrigeration equipment was removed. The electrical service, which was three-phase 1200 amp, was disconnected. The site is a slab, open slab, no finish, and it's an impediment to the rest of the use. We did not give you inside pictures. They're in the rebuttal, but you'll see that the utility of the site is based on requiring a high ceiling, and this is true of all industrial buildings. The two major issues with an industrial building for value are ceiling height and truck loading, not the rest of this stuff that you hear about. So if you have appropriate ceiling height, you can stack a rack. A rack is 5 feet. Utility is measured in multiples of 5 feet. That's how you get value. And the demo of the mezzanine level is not possible because I've looked at it yesterday. It appears to be part of the structure. All of this is reinforced concrete, and you're not chopping out a reinforced concrete mezzanine deck if there's concern about it forming part of the stability of the main structure. It is heavily reinforced. Like I said, the loading weight on that deck is 1,000 pounds per square foot. Yeah, and which is it's the same as a floor, and so it can't be removed. But you'll see if it gets entered, I'll verbally tell you right now, there's nothing on that deck, and it's obsolete at this point in time, and it's never rentable unless it's finished, powered, plumbed, and separately demised. Separately demised means you can come in from the street and not have to go through the building to go to your site because you can rent it. It's definitely not separately demised. It's part of the internal structure. So it was, and it's the purpose and function. Most mezzanines of this style are really an extension of the interior storage space. It's like assessing someone for their racking. It's not the way the proper methodology, and I think the pictures speak 1,000 words. Hopefully you'll see that. The rental rate we've applied is $425. I note the assessor was at $433. We have absolutely no issue with that difference in rates. Not a concern on our side. If the board cares to use his rate, I also note they've used a 4% vacancy and we used a 3%. So our main contention is simply on the income side is that the storage mezzanine is part of the structure and is not leasable space. The picture on page 2, just a bit of site description. So this picture comes from right after the addition was put up and before the grow up was decommissioned. Actually, no, that's the picture dates differently. One second, the assessor had a demo permit, I noted. Page, yes. That is before 2022, yet after construction started on the original site. And the reason is that the demolition that started on paid assessor's permit page 22 had to do with removing paving, and that paving was all dumped onto the site. And you'll see on the assessor's page 7, he's got a later picture. This is why I was asking these questions, is the later picture shows a bunch of debris on the north edge of the property. That is when they had to redo their paving, and they ripped out the old stuff and dumped the rest of the debris on site, did not haul it away, and the site is no longer lost utility. The second issue on the picture is very difficult to see, but as part of the process of changing into a herbicide storage, and it's not just storage, it's mixing, we'll discuss that later, site, was that you had safety requirements. And the historical pictures will also show that our top of our page 2 is north of the building, there's an indentation in the earth. Sorry, not an indentation, that's a berm. So the berm was required to be constructed. So if there was any spillage at the plant, it went into the berm and then flowed to the northwest. The northwest is a retention site. On our picture, it's dry. Yesterday when I went out, it had water drainage from snow in it. I don't think any of our pictures shows it justice, but that is on the subject's property. So they were required to have the berm and a collection pond for the potential spillage from the plant. That's all part of the safety and all part of the costs required to build a hazardous material storage building. This is a hazardous material storage building. The other changes that were done on the site were a removal of the former ammonia-based freezing and cooling equipment that Canada Packers had in, and this was replaced with a hot water heating system, which is relatively rare in warehousing because it costs more money. But the requirement in hazardous material is clear. You can't afford to have a spark from your typical space heater in a warehouse. You have to have a non-spark producing heat source. So everything has been plumbed with hot water for heating, an expensive proposition, but it's part of the business operation. And it's not something that adds market value and alternative use. It's just specific to this use as hazardous material storage. The when they purchased the property, the grow-op was in the midst of going under. Now the pictures, and I was asking about the pictures to try to date this. When those containers on the assessor's page 18, I believe I was asking about it, showed up, is when the site was the cannabis growing site was shut down. Now those containers are the nurseries, and there where the little seedlings get put in for their first periods of growth. Then they get transferred to the main grow op for continued growth under the UV lights. The construction of that facility was never complete. You can see from the pictures. I just checked the permits. The only permit closed on it ever was the plumbing permit. Now that plumbing permit was for the tanks for watering the site. That was closed and approved. So when the site went under, the pods were removed from the inside of the building and put on the outside of the building. Now, the owner, my review of the site yesterday, the owner's representative told me that the site never produced cannabis. It only ever went to the stage of the nursery stage, that the rest of the building was never used. And
okay, Mr. Neufeld, how is any of that relevant to what we're valuing today?
I'm getting there.
I'm waiting.
Okay, well, I'll go directly to your answer.
Please.
It was never completed. It couldn't be used. That's how it relates to it. The operation was never in production. And if you follow the cannabis industry, you know that it was overdone, and most of the sites are experiencing financial difficulties. They have tried to dispose of the property. It's a kit, by the way, and they have tried to dispose of the property. Agricultural-based users won't buy it because it's custom designed for cannabis. Cannabis, there's no interest in it, and that's a salvage value. As far as on the site goes, you can't have a grow op on the same lot as a herbicide production facility. One use kills the other use. So it's just dead space, and they're trying to market it. Like I said, it's a kit. No value on that. As it relates to the capitalization rate, the site is been registered for all environmental licenses, and there's some pictures. And incidentally, these pictures are on page 5, 6, and 7. This is a description of what Future Transfer does, but these pictures are actually from their site on Hervo, which I was in a couple of weeks ago. This is a different operation, but it's the same thing. This is what they do. They do this building is completely dedicated to herbicides, and typically the herbicides will come in solid form. They'll be warmed up and then repackaged to smaller containers in liquid form. So this isn't storage. This is repackaging, which I guess is more like manufacturing. The people wear protective clothing to shield themselves from spillage and vapors. It's not a standard warehouse, and the building is designed in such a way and repurposed in such a way to accommodate hazardous material storage. So it's a special use property. In this regard, and briefly, as I mentioned, the three issues: mezzanine space is not rentable, the greenhouse was never completed and can't be used, and it's salvage value, and I don't think the Assessment Act allows us to tax salvage value. Then the next issue having to do with the capitalization rate, and what we're looking at is we had looked at this as a base rate for industrial on our page 3, like the lowest possible rate for the best possible product is 6.5, and that's from our Collier's report, and we have it adjusted to 8.3. And we put in one municipal board order on this, and as part of your submission. That was a very recent case on 2544 Main, and in the rebuttal there's 2 more cases. The environmental is a 3-step process that kills your value. Number 1 is the testing and identification, very inexpensive compared to everything else. Number two is the cleanup, very expensive. And number three is the ongoing monitoring, which is required, as well as the market impact of detrimental conditions. That's the new word for it. The old word is stigma. The concept behind this is it doesn't matter if you're cleaned up or you're not. Your property will always bear the mark of a contaminated property. And in our Canadian justice system, I know that there's a special class of criminals who, once convicted of a crime, must always bear that badge. And it's the same with contaminated properties. It does not go away ever. Now, the impact of it varies from site to site. So if you were building a nursery, apartment, anything where people live, it's really going to take it off the market for that use. If you're using it for retail, it's going to be less desirable. Using it for industrial, the impact is less severe because the next guy along is going to repollute the property likely, but it's still going to give you costs involved for ongoing. You're forever going to have to do phase twos for whatever you do. You go to a bank, get a mortgage, you're going to spend this site probably $80,000 to $100,000 on test holes to satisfy your bank. That's just a reality of the situation of the laws today, and it's accepted, but it adds to the stigma, we'll call it. I don't think it's as severe. I don't think it's as severe as we've stated, as was stated by our evidence at 8.25. I think that it's a little less than that because across the street is the Shell refinery. We're not living in a clean neighborhood, but it's just the reality of the actual costs that impact the ongoing monitoring, the testing. The big one here is loans. And no, I didn't enter this as evidence. You can take it verbally, but when you go to the bank for a loan and your property is contaminated, you don't get to borrow as much money. So instead of a 70% ratio, you might get 50, you might get 60. You're also going to get a higher rate, and you're also going to get a shorter amortization period. All these means your loan cost is higher. And that's where the real stigma comes in. You don't get normal financing. Now, you rarely hear about financing in tax appeals because everybody assumes it's all the same. Well, it's not. And when you get a situation like this, the financing can go two ways. One, you can get beneficial rates, CMHC for multifamily, or you get the cap rate, because regardless of what you hear, it's just the NOI. It's not. The cap rate is usually 50 to 70% comprised of the bank costs, and then the rest is return on equity. Your bank costs rise, your loan is higher, you need to make more rent out of the property in order to pay for it. And that's the bottom line on this. So I would actually suggest that the rate is probably between 7.5 and 8% on this. It's going to be higher than normal, but not you'll see in a lot of the documentation today that the boards have applied rates of 2% on 2 percentage points for stigma. And in those two cases, that's because they abutted residential areas. In this case, it will never abut a residential area. So that's why I don't think it's as severe. If a good rate was 6.5, then you're probably looking at 7.5 to 8%. Hopefully before the end of this hearing, I'll just give you some revised numbers. And my apologies, I only started working on this 2 days ago because I was out of town inspecting contaminated properties. And other than that, nothing except my rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Froelich, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. In your evidence, you presented 910 Wall Street to be a good comparable to the decision on 2544 Main Street in terms of cap rate. Do you know when the sale was for that property? for
Sorry,
910.
just wondering if you get the page for that.
It was in your rebuttal. It was in your applicant's brief. It's from your board decision from 2544 Main Street.
Okay, so sorry. Let me just look at that. So it's in the.
Well, in your board decision.
Yeah, no, so that was submitted as evidence as 2544 Main Muni. Okay, and what page was that?
Well, you had mentioned, well, just bear with me, agent. Cap rate. Yeah, so on the board order, it is on page 14 where it said cap rate. And you said the agent indicated the most suitable comparable was 910 Wall Street for 2544 Main Street. So what's the main business at 910 Wall Street?
It's a mixed use. There's a bargain store. There's some institutions in there, and then there's the co-op, gas station, and car wash.
Okay, and so where's the majority of that? So do you know the square footage of 910 Wall Street?
Square footage of
the entire building.
The buildings?
Well, yeah. Well, the point is like you stated that it's the majority of that building is a retail. It's where the odd lots, just for the panel members. So is there the credit union's no longer there? Is the odd lot still there, Mr. Neufeld, at 910 Wall Street on Ellis?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, and so and do you know approximately how big that building is?
I can look it up, but I don't know.
It's 35,000 square feet.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
And so I just want to clarify. So your best comparable for 2544 Main Street, which is a gas station convenience store, was a retail strip mall?
No, I guess you weren't there, but when I said that, it was because it had a mix of gas station and retail usage, and that I was involved with the transaction, so I knew the details of the transaction. And one of these was that under the Manitoba law, the original polluter is responsible for all cleanup costs. So in this case, co-op has to shoulder that load. In the case of 2544 Main, there was some doubt as to who would shoulder it because of the original lease contract. In the case of an owner-occupied property, it's clear that the owner-occupant has to shoulder it. So in terms of a physical difference, that's why that was discussed. And we're getting into other evidence from other hearings. That's what I said. But I'm just looking at page 17, and they applied a 2% point jump on the cap rate as a result of the elevated risk, and that's just consistent the way boards have treated it.
So, but the point is, the majority of the building was built in 1958, and the co-op component of it is a small portion of the actual total value for that property. So I don't see how there's a connection between a gas station that was built in the 1990s compared to a retail strip mall that was built in 1958.
Mr. Froelich and Mr. If I'm going to interrupt here, I know that the panel has all reviewed this order. It was included in the evidence. The evidence that was provided at that hearing with respect to the comparables is not going to be of a lot of use and of little relevance to the determinations that have to be made here. The general principle, as I understand from Mr. Neufeld, is that the cap rate is adjusted upwards in this particular order by the municipal board as a result of the evidence that was before them at that point. We're not taking it as a general proposition that all cap rates have to be increased by 2%, but this is a case that is informative and will be taken into consideration in our deliberations.
Okay.
That being said, I don't want to go into the minutia of this report, of this municipal board order.
Mr. Neufeld, how much would it cost in today's dollars to build a 120,000 square foot warehouse that the new owners built in 2023?
I haven't researched that. You're asking me for evaluation, and you know I can't do that unless I do an appraisal. So I can't even guess.
So, but you're providing expert evidence with regards to all these other matters. So I'm just wondering, like, if you're building just the building, how much would a would a would that type of building cost? Would it be $100 a square foot?
I have not done a cost approach, and I'm not trying to avoid you. I have. It'd take me a lot more time to figure that out. And when I do a cost approach, I'm not like just going to go at Marshall and Swift. I'm going to go get quotes from contractors. That's what I do. That's the appropriate thing. So you're asking for
Okay.
3 or 4 days of work to answer the question. I don't know right now.
That's a fair question. Okay. So we have two components of this building, Mr. Neufeld. So you come in with a value of $9.4 million. What portion of that would be allocated to the old building, and what portion of that would be allocated to the new building?
Have not done that. I'm strictly doing it on the basis of the total building as it stands today.
So you wouldn't be able to give an answer with regards to a breakdown because it's your valuation. So you've just put it as one economic unit. You haven't separated them out, or wouldn't be able to provide any
I
insights.
don't think that forms part of any sort of valuation that I have ever done. We don't do breakdowns on age, life, and break them into sections. I told you I'm working on special properties now. We got buildings. I got one building that was built in 10 stages between the 40s and 2000. And we don't look at that on the cost basis and break down, add up the value of each section. What we look at it is what's the whole worth today and what's the remaining economic life typically.
Okay. So I got one other question, and this will be my last question. So if you had a 2023 building with 120,000 square feet, what sort of rent would that achieve in the marketplace? Would it achieve 435 or 425, or would it achieve a higher rent?
This particular building, I agree with the rent that's been in place. There's we have a fair amount of rents. I've been personally involved with one that came in at $5 in East Kildonan, and that was motivated by undue pressure. And yet we have ones I think these are in the report, the old Eaton's Warehouse, they're down at $2. Now, the difference on those is that in the one at $5, the tenant needed space. The one on the Eaton's Warehouse, the landlord needed to rent space, and that's the way that large buildings get valued. It's all due to a matching of space with user, and it's rarely ever happens. So you're going to see a great wide range in large buildings. The city of Winnipeg site in 1450 Mountain, that particular building has got, it's 400,000 square feet, and it's got like an incredible range of rents. The city needed space because for archive space, they paid more. Goose didn't need the space. They could negotiate with anybody. They paid less. It's what's available at the time you need it. And most industry is driven by their internal goals, especially manufacturing. When we all went through COVID and the province was going out to lease sites, they were not running the show. They had to accept what the market offered them. Yet a few months prior than that, they could have got, if they knew COVID was coming, they could have got stuff really cheap. So it's on a large building. I think the rates that I've seen on some of the furniture park ones, which were around 350, were reasonable negotiations, and other than that, it's really hard to match up. I kind of agree with the model in this case.
But your evidence in your brief was showing that the furniture park rent, the newer ones, were just give me one sec here, was 645.
No, that's gross.
Well, yeah, well,
So that one comes with those weren't those sites weren't demised for HVAC, and so they had to run a central system, and so that was included in it, and all the rest of the utilities were included in the rent. So I think there was a workup in there.
I don't know what you're referencing there. Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Colatruglia, any questions?
Well, I guess I'm gonna ask the question that Mr. Neufeld hasn't quite answered yet,
Okay.
which is, what is the value that you're suggesting for 2024, sir?
The value, yes.
It appears that you said that you were going to modify the cap rate that you're gonna use,
Yes,
sir?
I just did this while I was answering Mr. Frolich's questions. So
Fair enough. Could you
I'm
share
trying to
that
get
with us
a
first?
step ahead of you. Okay,
Okay,
so
well, there we go.
the 463 square feet at 433 a square foot, I'm in agreement with it. That's 963, 265. There is no value to the mezzanine. So we take that through, and I'm applying the 4% vacancy rates. That brings our effective gross to 924,734. And I've applied, and I'm not looking for any more trouble here. I've applied 3% for expenses, no recoverables. So that 3% is 27,742. The shortfall is done at 385 a square foot, as the assessor has. That gives me an NOI of 862,733. The cap rate I'm suggesting at 7.75%, and again, it's not a 2% bump. It's about a percent, 1.5 points, because it's again, it's based on the future use, but it's the major impact, as I mentioned, is still difficult financing, and that comes to 11,132,037 rounded to 11,132,000.
Okay, thank you. So I do have some questions, and I listened to you speak about the greenhouse and that it never fully came into production, correct?
Yes.
And you also mentioned that building is more like a temporary structure. It's kind of like one of these almost like a kit kind of a thing. Is that
Yeah,
what I'm understanding?
It's like I don't know if you've ever seen the kits for self-storage, but
Yeah.
it's like that. So you'll see very, very skinny posts because of the class, the Canada Building Code class on it being a greenhouse. It doesn't have the same structural load requirement as a regular building. The walls on it are a panel, and it's a thin insulated foam panel, dual steel on both sides. So
Okay.
I don't know the thickness of it, but I've seen these before. They're about 1.25 1.5 thick of foam. And the roof has glass panels, and on the inside you can open them up to
Right.
get in the sunlight or not. I mean, they've got a lifespan, a very short lifespan. It's a greenhouse style building.
Okay. And I'm just curious why you'd made another comment with respect to the greenhouse, saying that you couldn't have an operation in the greenhouse while having a herbicide plant basically on the same site. Am I understanding your comment correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And if you to refer back to the picture on the top of page 2, where I know it's a little difficult to see where the berm is, And the
And the berm is on the north side of the property, that dark line? Just
yeah,
past the paving, is that what you're suggesting?
it's on the north side of the main building. So
Okay.
you could have spillage associated with the herbicides, and then and the berm is supposed to protect it, but you know, this is fluids, so you know, the risk factor there is going to be, you're a cannabis site and you're trying to sell pure wholesome cannabis with no preservatives or herbicides, and you're located in a herbicide plant. Like, it doesn't play well for your marketing, and it is a risk on the manufacturing side. And regardless of you know, if we put ourselves in the position of pretending we're engineers and we say, no, there's never going to be spillage there, well, tell that to the consumer. You know, you don't have
Fair enough.
yeah, I think you
So-
understand the concept.
I understand what you're trying to say, sir. I find it interesting that you make that comment, yet the owner of this property obviously purchased this property with this building on site, correct?
They purchased it for the land and the existing building that they could make changes to. At the point in time that they made the purchase, the cannabis was out of production.
Okay, and you said it never really fully ramped up, correct?
Well, I interviewed the site operator who's been there since day one, and he said no, that it's never been used. It was only those pods, the little nurseries. That's the only when it was abandoned, they found the seedlings in there, and the inside, you'll see from the pictures, was never set up. So when you do a cannabis grow, you're going to have tables, trays, watering systems, drainage.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fact that you're giving it absolutely zero value at this point.
Well, okay, as a you're only going to see salvage value on it. There's no tenants who are looking for space like this, and again, no tenants who are going to rent with a herbicide place next door. Better yet, you have a landlord who does not want to take the risks of insuring themselves against the spillage to an outside operation for a couple of $1,000s in rent. It's just not worth the risk.
Gotcha.
And that's the owner's main contention. Like, what's the point? I'm going to expose myself, and I'm going to have to take out extra liability.
I appreciate your comment, and I thank you for that. I'm going to move on to the main building, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You mentioned that the heat source in this building is not your standard electric type heat, correct?
Well, your standard
hot water.
Your standard would be a gas-fired space heater.
Okay. And like, you know, hung from the ceiling kind of an idea.
Correct, yes.
That is not the case here. They've got basically hot water heat because of the herbicide process, correct?
Yes, because you can't afford to have flashes, and you'll see in the pictures there's flammable areas listed. But you know, in the repackaging of herbicides, you're going to have some vapor escape from time to time, and this stuff's flammable. And
I can appreciate that. So, and you also mentioned that source of heat was more expensive than your more standard heating that you mentioned.
That's correct. It's I don't know the exact number, but like the cheapest system is always the suspended gas heat.
Of course. And then you spoke of contamination to the site, and you feel that it's affecting the overall value, and you're ascribing an increase in your cap rate for that, correct?
That's correct.
Now, this is a herbicide plant. It's obviously fairly modern. I would say it's about as modern can be, it looks like to me. The contamination is from the previous process that was there. Was it to do with petroleum, sir, or was it something else?
No, the first usage was as a a freezer and cooler space for meat. And that
Right.
is now in that system, what they use is ammonia for cooling.
Yes,
Compressed ammonia.
mentioned that, and you'd mentioned that that had been taken out already, correct?
Yes, that's been taken out. So that was one concern. Now ammonia does leak and you can smell it. So it's usually not a major issue. You can catch it right away. And I don't know about any testing that's been done. I brought that up just in the description. Now, what our concern here is that the current usage is herbicides, which are clearly on the list of what's the right word? I don't want to use dangerous, but
Controlled substance, maybe.
yeah, they pose a risk to the environment. In small applications, they're helpful to grow crops, but in large concentrations, they kill people.
Yeah, true.
And so every single and I've praised in Winnipeg alone, I know of 3 hazardous material buildings, storage buildings, and they're all on the list. This one's new, so it's been registered and with Manitoba Environment, and I see nothing forthcoming on a public declaration. But you know, this just goes back to what I was telling you about qualifications earlier. In the hearing 2544 Main, I got asked the question, "How do you know it's contaminated?" And I said, "Well, that's real simple. It's a gas station." That doesn't take any expertise. This is a hazardous material storage building.
And Mr. Neufeld, I certainly don't disagree with that comment that you made just now. If it's a gas station, old gas stations, all of them have had some form of pollution that has resulted from the tanks being in the ground. I completely agree with that. But that's not what we have in this instance, correct?
What we have in this instance is an environmental factor, and it's going to be approached in a different manner. So when we look at this, I'll use it stigma because I guess it's shorter word, but when we look at the concept of the stigma, in real estate, what you're going to do, I'm going to put it on the market. I would like to get market value for it. So the first thing that will happen is you won't even bother with a phase 1. That's a filed check. You're going to go straight to phase 2. And phase 2 is going to involve probably on this site. I just finished a pulp and paper mill the same size, and they didn't drill enough holes. I'm going to say 80 to 90 test holes. And so there's a big cost there, and they're going to find something. And it doesn't matter what they find. The bank's going to say you're painted by the same brush no matter what we find, because right now you're doing herbicides. And we're not taking a risk on it because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's going to be impacted by that, and then you're going to be impacted by punitive financing costs, which lead to the need for a higher cap rate to get a greater return on your money to pay the loan. That's the nature of environment. It's not that emotional argument where people complain, "I'm going to get murdered and killed by your poison." It is the bank.
Yeah, no, I understand. What I was going to ask you next is, with respect to the brand new addition that was put on, that was put on by the current owner, correct?
That's correct.
So he put it on knowing his business, knowing what his requirements are for his processes, correct?
That's correct.
And whether he did it through the bank or how he did it, you and I both don't know that at this point, do we?
Well, I looked ahead and I know a bit more about it now, yes, but I can't comment on that.
All right.
It is a different process on his lending side.
Well, I think those are my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
Yes, thank you. Just in regards to the greenhouse building there, you said that it's been obsolete, like it was just kind of preliminary operations began. So those began when? Like,
I think around 2019 or 2020 was the beginning of the idea to put a grow up on it, and I'm
In
just
line with the building permit.
yeah, like I don't recall when cannabis was legalized in Canada, but it would have been with that initial interest of that it was coming, and so that was a legalization date was October 2018, and so that in the beginning there was a lot of movement for people to create grow ops, thinking it was a great business, and that fell apart actually rather rapidly on that because it wasn't the big boom that everyone thought it would be. So this, by the looks of it, was part of that initial interest in it to get an operation up.
Okay, and so it has power. You mentioned before it has power, so it has.
Yes, a great deal of power. Yes.
And it also has water and sewer.
That I couldn't see. It looked to me like that it had trucked in water, or there might have been piped in water, but I don't think it was ever connected. And we couldn't figure that out. And the plumbing permit I mentioned was on the internal side. When hopefully you'll see the pictures of the tanks later. That permit was approved. I'm fairly sure there's no water drainage from the site. There's no sewer.
So do you have any evidence that reflects that the electrical's being shut off?
No, the electrical's still in place, but the owner of the property has shut off the power to the site, and they're cut off from their main building, just because it's not needing. It doesn't need power now.
Okay.
I tried turning the lights on. There's nothing there.
Okay. Okay. And in regards to the overall property, when you say the area, 222,463 square feet, you indicate the mezzanine is just encompassed within that it shouldn't be separate, or should it be are you saying it should be added to, but the 433 rental rate?
No, the 224 is the plan area, which we are in agreement with the assessor on. The mezzanine space is in their workup. They've added an extra 18,000 square feet, and I didn't add it.
And so you're saying there's no value to the mezzanine?
For industrial, no, because it's just really offers well, you'll see from the pictures that it was so custom designed for the previous use that the alternative use, there's no ability to get goods up there, and there's no reason for it. You'll see from the pictures they need inside space and high cube space, and and that's typical of most industrial users. The idea of adding a mezzanine in principle means that the space under it is worth less because you don't have high cube space. So you don't add value, you take the space and divide it in half. So if you thought, sorry, not you, but if someone thought that the value of the warehouse was 433, well, the value of the mezzanine is 267, and the value of the space underneath it is 267. Add them together to get 433, because you don't create value by making a mezzanine an industrial, because you're ruining your high cube space. And that's the basic principle.
Okay, thank you. Those were all my questions. Thanks for your presentation.
And Mr. Neufeld, I just want to confirm a few things. The site is on the list with the provincial government. That's correct?
It's
of environmental, or it's on a watch list for environmental.
It's been registered, but it hasn't made the public list. Okay.
Has any testing been done to date? And for environmental concerns?
I'm sorry, I never asked if they had that. I
Fair enough.
don't know.
Okay. Is there ongoing monitoring of spillage, or is there ongoing monitoring by the provincial authorities of this site?
The provincial authorities are not monitoring it. It is self-monitored, as Mr. Colatruglio suggested, very modern systems for monitoring. That was part of the legislation in the last 20 years. All environmental sites that have tanks of stuff need ongoing monitoring. All of them need double-walled construction, that sort of thing. So it's up to date on the standards.
Okay, and that kind of does answer my next question about being constructed in compliance with the province of Manitoba and federal building regulations for this kind of project.
That's
okay.
Correct. And the other part of that issue is that you're also incurring additional costs that are not market based; they're business based.
And I think that completes my questions. Now, you indicated you had rebuttal evidence as well. Has that been distributed, Ms. Picoto?
Just distributing it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, I think that's probably wise. We can have a quick look at the rebuttal evidence, get some submissions, and decide our process. So if we can take 5 minutes, is that enough, Mr. Froelich?
Yeah, 5 minutes fine, but if you need to take 10, it gives me a chance to have an apple.
Well, I've got 11 o'clock now. Why don't we come back at 11:10? Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. The panel has had an opportunity rather now to review the rebuttal evidence presented or filed now by Mr. Neufeld. There are a number of points related to this that are outlined on page 1. Of the 4 points, the mezzanine, the points have been made, but the photos may be of some use, and since there is a dispute about the utilization of the mezzanine, that rebuttal evidence will be allowed. The greenhouse, we believe, has been canvassed in detail already. There's actually a concession by Mr. Froelich that the greenhouse as it stands now is obsolete. But if you wish to refer to those photos, Mr. Neufeld, absolutely, that's acceptable as well. The cap rate, you have already provided all of that evidence with respect to the points raised, so we're not going to consider that as rebuttal evidence. And I'm assuming that the final aspect, the purchase, is the board orders. We will take the board orders, the municipal board orders into account. And as you've already referred to them, I don't think we need to go any further into that. Fair enough?
So yeah, that's fine. Look, stop me if I get off track.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So, and the rebuttal, it was, I just went out there yesterday at lunch because I hadn't had a chance, and I'm trying to stick to the facts here. So starting on page, you've heard the statements already. The pictures are all I was going to refer to. Starting on the first page, that's the stairwell to the mezzanine, open steel. That's not code for occupancy. That's a working space. You know, for occupancy, you need to have closed stairs for a rentable space, and that's what it is all the way through. Now the picture on the second page, so I'm just trying to understand what I did here. Oh yes, so the second page shows a concrete mezzanine at the top, and a hole has been bored in it for I don't know what the hole was for, if it was there before or not, but you can see into it what happens with the space. And my commentary is, look underneath it. You've got these 5 foot high, there's a name for these things. They're bulk liquid containers, and they can only stack them one high because they've lost usable space above. That's, you lose value, not gain value with a mezzanine, because you have an obstacle to doing what you'd like to do. The picture on the bottom of the page is the top level of that mezzanine. So this is where the equipment was in, the refrigeration equipment was in. I missed the sign that had the floor loading, not disputing, good thick floor, but look what they can use for it today. They've got their leftover cabling from their conversions. Everything's been stripped out of it in terms of the cooling equipment. There's no power to it. It has lights. That's it. There are no wall plugs. There's no plumbing. There's no finish. The next picture in the third page is another view of this same floor, and just showing this is construction debris. This is not contributing to the value, not in any way whatsoever. This is just leftover space. Get something, put it out of the way. Now, the interesting part of this is at the bottom of page 3, along the, I don't know what side I was on when I was up there because I got all turned around, but they actually managed to incorporate the part of the mezzanine as a deck for feeding these bins. So these bins that you're looking at are steel bins that are filled with chemicals, and they've been placed along this wall. And a picture on page 4 shows that they were then installed a walkway to get over to them to feed certain things or to monitor the equipment on the upper level. So this takes the place of a walkway, a catwalk. This is not rentable space. I'm going way off topic here to a degree, but I've recently involved in a potash mine, and we have exactly the same setup for our solution monitors. And we just have a steel walkway because that's all you need. This is obsolete. And instead of removing it because of structural concerns, they saw if they could just adapt it in some way. But it's a poor use of space and a poor use of the space under it. The next picture at the bottom of page 4 shows one of the sites where they actually used an auger to bring up chemicals to feed the tanks that they have here. And I'm standing on the mezzanine. The next picture on top of page 5 is the electrical room that is located in the mezzanine. Doesn't take up much space. This is the main electrical room. And then the bottom picture shows the second set of stairs that go back down again. Again, these are that actual construction with the yellow, that's a catwalk stair. That's not a building stair. This is, and you see these in industrial uses, and it's so done that way so that they have open holes in the bottom so they won't gather debris up, and it's painted yellow for visibility. This isn't space. Top of the greenhouse, again, not much to show you here. The first picture is the panel, lots of juice going in. I couldn't figure out what it was. It says it has different loads on it. But you know, greenhouses, cannabis ones consume a lot of power. The pods at the bottom, these had been removed. Those are the nurseries. These pipes in front are conduits, which we couldn't figure out what they're for, but they are decommissioned, whatever they were. I assume that there's some sort of a power conduit, but I couldn't tell. But it's all been disconnected. The next page, page 7, is the inside, and it looks well lit, but that's natural light coming from above. That's one of the mixed tanks. And then the bottom of page 7, this is the plumbing permit that was closed. So these are, I believe that these are the mixing tanks and holding tanks for the fertilizer irrigated product that gets put into the plants. You'll note the floor is dirt, and the bottom of page 8 is the inside of it, and you can see I was saying it's a kit, so very, very small beams. This is greenhouse quality, a dirt floor, and you can see the light fixtures are in place, but you know, notice that there's no setup for the plants, never has been as far as I was told. There is no floor drainage in here, which I found very, very surprising in a greenhouse. because there's always floor drainage. So it's not finished. Pictures, the lights, and the pods again. On the 10th page, there's just you can see the construction quality. I think that's a 4x4 metal post on a concrete pad, not a pad. It's I forgot the name of it. They're about 3 feet deep. Footing. Thank you.
Such great.
On the bottom of page 10, this is a view back to the main site, and there's two sets of tanks. Now, the tanks on the left are just sitting there, but the tanks further in, they're painted white behind you look past the light standard, those are in use. Those are double steel, and they contain chemicals, and they are heated for our temperature, of course. So they have outside storage of chemicals as well. So as I was talking about the potential for spill, on top of the inside issues, you have the outside issues as well. And now we have to worry about freezing and frost and bursting pipes. So it's that's their business. This is what they do, and that's how it's designed. And I put about the cap rate. I think this is part and parcel of the whole environmental issue. Top of page 11, it's a really bad picture, but this is the debris from the demolition they did, and it's all along where the berm is, and it extends all the way to the drainage pond. And earlier I talked at the bottom of page 11, I told you about your mezzanine, you lose floor space. These are metal containers. They're generally 5 feet high, and you can see that they're stacked 4 high on the right side. That is industrial space. So if you put a mezzanine in there, you saw what happened. You can only put one under the mezzanine, because not only do you need the stacking height, you need the forklift ability to go in there, lift it up, get it in, get it out. So the mezzanine, they wish they could strip out, because then they can have more of these containers of their product. And page 12 is just is one of the repackaging sites. This one is repackaging into 3-liter containers from larger containers. A lot of automated equipment in here.
Hey, Mr. Neufeld, I think you're going beyond the limits of the rebuttal that we discussed.
Well, in regard to it, what I'm trying to show here is there were some questions about in the cap rate about questions were asked had to do with we're using modern methods. What's the risk of an accident? And the point is, this isn't just storage. This is repackaging, and that's where the added risk comes in.
My apologies, Mr. Applicant. I'm just noticing that our assessor's camera is off, so I'm just wondering if he's still there.
Maybe he's
I'm
eating.
here, but it kicked me out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you
I
can still
can
hear us,
hear
okay?
everything. It's just that all of a sudden it popped up. I got a weak connection, and I'm saying, I'm pretty sure I connected after the break, and then all of a sudden I had a weak connection, and then I'm gone. So it's just I'm not too sure. And right now my screen's clouded. Could I actually maybe exit and try relogging on again?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We'll just stop.
Sorry about that, Mr. Neufeld.
I don't think we have to go offline. Try
Okay,
to do this.
let me just shut out and let me get back in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Because
Ms. Picoto, it looks like this may be a little more than a quick reboot. Maybe we should go offline for a minute or two. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. When we broke, Mr. Neufeld, I believe you were just concluding your remarks with respect to the rebuttal, or did you have more to add?
No, they're just a very, very short. I'm going to be quick about it. So bottom of page 12 on the rebuttal, again, this has to do with the cap rate. The blue tank is for solids. They're warmed up and they go into the steel tanks as liquids. Then the steel tanks, some get poured into the jugs. So we're talking about redistribution and the chance of spillage. It exists. The next page is 13. This is just one of the chemicals that they use in it. I don't think there's any doubt of what it is. The red tanks at the bottom are gases that are used in the process. One is hydrogen and the other is nitrogen. So obviously hydrogen is a very dangerous element to work with. And then the page 14 is again, it's a repeat picture by the looks of it. But the, and I'll be quick. You can see the white pipes in the top. That's for the water lines, hot water lines going to the furnace. And that was it. In board orders, you're correct. This is nothing new. I don't know if this has actually been submitted, but we've made the point already that the board is generally recognized about a 2% difference on for contaminated property. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, any questions on the rebuttal evidence?
Yes, two questions. At any point during my presentation, Mr. Neufeld, did I make a reference that the mezzanine space should be leased out separately from the rest of the building?
I'm not sure what you mean. You put it as leasable space.
You made reference to the fact that it's a unique space. It doesn't have plumbing. It doesn't have this. You know, it's not a self-contained unit. And so how I perceive this is that you believe that I'm advocating that this 18,000 square feet can be demised by itself and doesn't add any value to the building whatsoever.
Well, that is the definition of leasable space. It's not your definition, it's the world's definition, and the world's definition is leasable. It has to live up to standards.
So that storage space there has no value to the organization?
No, absolutely not. In this particular case, I think it's rather obvious. It's a detraction.
Okay. So then for other facilities, like say, for example, mezz space at Old Dutch Potato Chips, would that have no value as well?
Generally, I haven't seen that space. I have no idea. So all space has to be looked at it on its own. But generally, mezzanine space in industrial is not a value to the real estate. The only times you'll see it differently, it depends on the intent of the original construction. So you see a lot of modern flex, they call them flex warehouses, but they're just flex buildings. And if they get built with a real second story, then you could say, yeah, you've created some value here because you're going to rent to office users. But if your primary use is industrial, it's always very, very questionable. And if you have an industrial space with, for example, an attached, clearly constructed two-story office, yes. If you just have it added in the working area, generally no.
So are you making the decision that 100% of potential users of this building would not find any value to this space?
I'm saying it offers no value, economic value that differs from racking.
Okay.
And on top of it, it cuts the space in two. You see, there are 5-foot containers. You've lost the ability to store high cube. You've lost value.
But it's 120,000 square foot building. I'll just leave that as it is. So on page 12 and 14, is that the brand new building, those pictures there, or is that the original building that was built in 1997?
Okay, I Yeah, I was bad boy. I didn't mark these. Okay. 14 is the new building because that's where they have the flammable area postings. Yes, I recall that. And 12 is the old building.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions on the rebuttal?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Colatruglio?
No, I think they've been covered. Thank you.
I think so as well. Mr. Froelich, have you any summary?
Well, the point is, I did provide rebuttal information. I do believe so. I sent an email this morning with regards to a conversation that Mr. Neufeld and I had yesterday. And it's stuff that Mr. Neufeld and I discussed. So I sent it to the Board of Revision at 8:34 this morning. And it was a decommissioned letter with regards to a property that Mr. Neufeld had referenced.
Okay.
I'm just distributing it now.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that there had been another.
Yep, that's fine. And because of the uniqueness of these properties here, there's what's the proper quorum or order that we'd go through this, right? And so
Okay, I've got it now. It's a letter from Manitoba Environmental Operations.
Yep. And so this, can I proceed, Mr. Chairperson?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So,
but Mr. Froelich, I would ask you not to refer to other conversations that you had with Neufeld, just with respect to this letter. Please.
No problem. It's just that, yep, I understand. So with regards to this letter, so with contamination sites, this letter was dated January 4th, 2011. And underground, the title says Underground Storage Tank Systems, Decommissioned, Site Remediation, Convenience Store at 2544 Main Street, right? So you could go through the letter just acknowledging that Manitoba's position on the site. The report states the following, that the following were decommissioned and removed, between October 20th, 2025. And just the petroleum impacted on soil was taken to a recycling facility. It's the position of Manitoba Conservation that no further remediation is required at this point. The site should not be considered a contaminated site pursuant to the Contaminated Sites Remediation Act. Any sort of residual contamination create exposure. The responsibility will be directed by this department for remedial measures. Okay, and so essentially, what it boils down to, this was a letter from Warren Rospat at the time. I was in conversation with him yesterday with regards to industrial uses and what type of, with regards, he was no expert with regards to cap rates, but there's a lot of examples here. So at the time where this letter was sent, this property was, it was certified as being that no other remediation needed to be required. So, but moving forward, because there's always potential for gas leaks at a gas station, it's probably contaminated right now as we speak. But what's interesting right now, what I shared with Warren, is that there are many examples within the city of Winnipeg where if a gas station has been removed, as long as it complies to the zoning, it'll be fine. So the zoning for this property on Main Street is C2. As long as the C2 property is within the zoning for this property, it can be used. And when I think about there's many examples where old gas stations have been decommissioned. And as long as the zoning matches, then there's no other further remediation. It's on the list that's been documented. But the point is, we'll have at Inkster and McRae, there used to be an old Shell station located there. It's now a Bank of Montreal.
Okay. Mr. Froelich, you're getting way outside the rebuttal with respect to this.
With regards to this letter here, what it consists of is that at the time, there was no it was fully, there's no other remediation that needed to take place. But as long as the usage remains consistent, it should not impact the value of the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
I'm sorry. Yes, your last statement. You said it should not impact the value of the property. Does that say that in the letter somewhere?
No, when I say that though, it doesn't prevent from future development taking place on
Where
this
does it
property.
say that?
Oh, it was in through my conversation with Warren Rosfeld yesterday.
And this letter was from remediation done in 2005, correct?
Yes, correct.
2005. So 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were clear that today it's probably got new problems, right?
Oh, I'm not doubting that, but the point is, any other development, because there's a lot of properties within the city of Winnipeg on former gas stations that can be used and that can be used for other commercial means.
Does Mr. Rostad get involved in any way with the marketing of properties?
No, but this is their procedure that they have.
Okay.
And then we haven't seen a premium in my research over time, that we haven't seen a premium being placed on cap rates just because it's been on the list, on the contamination list. Because why would there be all these other developments within the city of Winnipeg?
Have you brought any market evidence to show that?
Well, I don't have any market evidence here right now, but we know that there have been a lot of former gas stations that have been reused for commercial properties.
Okay, but you didn't bring the board any evidence of that, nor have you brought them evidence of what was done for the properties or what processes they went through, nor do you know anything about their financing arrangements, do you?
Recommissioned within the city of Winnipeg, Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Colatruglio?
I do not have questions, thank you.
And I don't have any questions on the rebuttal, thank you. And I know that we are going to be dealing with this same address in the next application. So perhaps what we will do is hold off the summary until then. If that's acceptable, we've heard the evidence on this, or having heard the evidence, we will conclude this matter and move on to the next item on the docket, which is actually number 1 on the docket. And that is for the year 2025 at 1 Warman Road. I know we've had a very fulsome discussion, to put it politely, of all of the issues here. And we can also take the position that the evidence as heard on the previous application can be applied as though it were read in and heard for this application, if that speeds the process up a bit. I don't want to cut anybody short on what they have to say, but given the similarities, I'm proposing that. So Mr. Froelich, would you lead us through, introduce the property, the role, and your evidence on the 2025 supplemental, please?
Of course, Mr. Chairperson, and just to let you know, you'll have to give me time to go through stuff to find what's new and what's old, so this way I don't repeat myself.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yep. File number is 245191. Roll number is 0605177 2000. The assessed value we have for the 2025 appeal, utilizing an April 1st, 2023 reference date, is $16,892,000. The leasable area is the same at 240,493, and you've heard everything else. And we're asking that the assessment be confirmed. Request for information. The new owners have been compliant with regards to completing their income and expense mailer information. As you can see on the top of page 2, they've completed a sales mailer, and they've also provided us the 2022 income and expense mailer. So the difference between this one and the last one is this property had changed hands. There was a change of ownership. Property was purchased by the new owner for $12,200,000, and that was on 120,000 square feet. So they paid $1,200,000 for 120,000 square feet of property. Pictures are the same. I am now referencing page 11 of my brief. The standard finish for the first PID is $222,463, utilizing a rent of $446. The second, the storage or mes space is $18,030 to come up with a GPI of $1,104,000, utilizing vacancy at 3%, expenses at 3%, shortfall at $4. We come up with a net operating income of $1,006,135. The cap rate that we're using for this property is 6.15%. And the reason why this cap rate's in existence is because this building, half of the building was built in 2023, and the other half was built in 1997. So it's a newer build, and our information has showed us newer builds do have lower cap rates. In terms of large rent comparables, they're similar to what we had used before, and I had made modifications compared to 2024 and 2023 to make sure that I didn't have any post-reference rents on here. So if it's okay with the chairperson, do I have to go through the rents at all here?
No, I think we've been through those, unless there's one in particular, unless there's any in particular that have relevance to this valuation as opposed to the previous one we dealt with.
No, I think they're all, they're staying. It's a warehouse, and when we look at the valuation for this property, it was a warehouse in the past. It was manufacturing in the past. It's using like a quasi manufacturing warehousing start activity. If it went onto the marketplace again, it would be marketed as a warehouse.
Okay.
Cap rates are the same. I am now referencing the income and expense mailer on page 16, showing that this property is fully owner occupied. The permits are the same. The building addition is the same. I am now on page 25. So page 25 is the original sales listing that we had for this property. What's interesting about this property, despite the applicant's words, what they've done is they've said that this building is plus or minus 120,000 square feet of building space on 23 acres. So clearly, Cushman, Wakefield, and Stevens believe that there was value to that 18,000 square feet, because if they didn't feel that there was value to the 18,000 square feet, they would have listed the listing it as 102,000 square feet. So that's what's shown in the listing. What we have for property highlights: institutional quality facility, well located within the Mission Industrial Park in St. Boniface. The original building had 12 docks and 2 grade loading doors, ample parking on site. It clearly states the breakdown between the mezz and the mezz space and the main floor building. It also talks about the indoor greenhouse that was built in 2020. Main ideal for this building is manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, low site coverage, and they show the price. This was unlisted price. Here are some pictures of the original building that we have in with this listing. I do believe, I think it's a 2021. Just wait, the sale. I'll just I don't want to speak out of turn here. It was like either 2020, I think 2021, but I'll tell you in a sec. And then so I'm on page 28, showing the pictures that had taken place on One Warman Road with regards to the large lot, which is currently a warehouse, but on the corner of Panet and Warham, that's where they built the brand new facility of 120,000 square feet. And here's the sales mailer. So the property, so the listing was probably 2021, and the property did sell on May 2022. So actually did the sales verification for this process. We had knowledgeable buyers and knowledgeable sellers on this property, and the sale price was $12,200,000, which works out to around $100 a square foot, based on math that I've done previously. The sale price is the sale price above the actual price? Yes. What date was it agreed upon? So December 7th, 2021. Was this an open market transaction? Yes. Were there any other items here? Nope. Yeah, so it was a full sale interest. It was and so on the bottom where it says property characteristics, they consider the building to be in good condition. And what was interesting about this is, so now on page 30 of my document, the entire amount for this property was there was a mortgage loan taken out by Farm Credit Corporation. Mr. Neufeld has some other details about this, but this was taken out of Regina, and they mortgaged the full amount of the value for this property. So I had discussed this with another person who has their AIC designation, if there was anything unique about this sale that he could tell from the sales mailer, and he told me he did not.
I'm going to sort of object to that. I don't even know what he's talking about here. We don't get into that sort of thing in the AIC. And if he has a witness, should have brought him in.
Yeah, I'm not. You can move on, Mr. Frolick. I don't know that what your discussion would have relevance.
All I was saying is that I asked him if the sale looked good from his perspective with regards to the documentation that I had provided.
I'm sorry, again, you're asking for an AIC member to validate something. He only does it in writing. Did he get it in writing?
No, I did not.
Okay, so he's violating standards. I don't believe he would.
And I wouldn't be misleading the Board of Revision.
Okay.
Can I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. So what we have here on page 31, here we've got the land transfer document with regards to the lease information. Easements that I see here, because Miss Anderson had a question with regards to any sort of information with regards to on the title, transfer of land. So on page 32, you can see that the sale is registered at $12,200,000. Transfer here on page 33. One transfer land. Okay. Just going through the documentation, and you can review it at your time, and just shows you the signature on page 36 and the land transfer document signed by the appropriate person. Here's the vendor information with regards to who had sold it. It was a numbered company with their board of directors. On the purchaser information, it's another Manitoba numbered company, and they're based out of Tillsburg, Ontario, where they have their head office, I do believe, because I've seen another title search that came up with this number here as well. Title information, caveat, no subdivision agreement here. Restrictive, there's something on the bottom of 42, servient restrictive conveyance. I don't know the details. And there's a mortgage that was taken out for $50 million. I don't know why it would differ from the sale price. And then we have something over $70 million. Here's the supplementary notice that went out to the property owner. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Yes, I'm assuming everything asked and answered in the previous hearing carries forward. So just new questions. In regard to the sales, you now have 4 sales, 2 at about $50 a foot, 2 at about $100 a foot. You've only investigated 1. Which one are you going to rely on? Are any of them?
And don't forget, there was a sale in March 6, 2001 for $15 million. Well, yeah, but that's a bit funny. Yeah, you're right. The point is, there are situations where there are motivated buyers and motivated sellers. Maybe the sale was undervalued at 5.9. I can't speculate, but the buyer on March 18th paid $11 million, right? We know the value of industrial properties have gone up in value, and the Farm Credit Corporation wouldn't value.
Sorry, I'm not asking about farm credit. We'll get to that later. That's a different issue. You
Okay.
got 4 sales, 2 at 50 a foot, 2 at 100 a foot. What makes you think one's better than the other?
Well,
Or sorry, let's back that up. Are you relying on the sales?
I have it for information in my brief, just like I have market rents for information.
Are you relying on it?
It's a part of my presentation, Mr. Neufeld.
Yes or no, please.
I think that answer is acceptable, that it forms part of his brief. It's part of the evidence. It's not 100% reliance based on it. I think
and I apologize here for butting in, but in my business, if it forms part of your appraisal, that means you're relying on it. There's no such thing as information only.
Razor, Mr. Neufeld.
So you can't cut hairs here.
Well, the point is, you come with valuations here where you say I'm not acting as an appraiser, but you're using this information here that as an appraiser, I would have to.
I just want to know.
To me, there's a contradiction in statements.
I just want to know if it forms part of your valuation reliance.
It was asked and answered, Mr. Neufeld.
Okay, I didn't understand your answer.
The answer to Neufeld was yes, it forms part of his reliance, but it's not completely 100%. It's not 100% relied on to form the valuation.
Okay, it sounds like a political response. Okay, moving along. This valuation, which is on page somewhere here. What's your valuation page here?
Let me look it up, Mr. Neufeld. It is on page 11.
11. Okay, so page 11. So then, okay, I got it. This was all model generated.
That's correct.
Okay, and on page the permits starting page 17, are these the same one as the last time around?
Yes, it is, Mr. Neufeld.
Okay, so there's still no closed permit on the greenhouse then?
Mr. Neufeld, if you want, I could send you documentation in front of me that shows that permit's been closed.
The plumbing permit, we know, are not disagreeing, is closed. I know what you're looking at. I am too.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, so it's a redundant question then, because
no, I know it isn't.
No, because
okay,
you're asking
I'm moving on.
That the property owner never took out for the previous owner.
On page 26, did you interview Mr. Maximic or Mr. Pristiance?
Let me pull up page 26. I did not.
When you have a number that's with a plus minus in front of it, what would that suggest to you?
That it's not 100% accurate, that it's within the range.
It's not accurate. Okay.
Well, within the range, Mr. Neufeld, that, for liability purposes, they're not going to be significantly off than the main plan of the area and the main mez area. So,
well, since you brought it up, you know what that means for liability purposes when you put plus minus, don't you?
And I could speculate, but I'll let you answer that.
Okay. On page, I can't read this right. Page 30. No, sorry. 29. Question number 16. I can't read that. Is that 1.1 million?
It looks like 1.1 million.
Okay.
But it's hard to say. It could look like 10 million too. And and so the reason why I say it could look like 10 million is because the allocation. So that would explain why on the title searches there's more.
Don't speculate.
Well,
please.
If you can't determine whether it's 1.1 million or 10 million, that's acceptable. We'll try to make our own determination or listen to the evidence provided by Mr. Neufeld.
Okay. On page 30, what do you know about, do you know anything more about this than what's stated here in Farm Credit Corporation?
Nope, I didn't do any further research beyond that.
And do you know anything about their lending policies?
I do not.
Okay. On page,
But I do know how can a loan out money if they don't feel that they're going to get their money back. I think that's standard. I can look at their missions.
I'm sorry, you're making things up here.
You know what, Mr. Newfield? No.
You don't know how the Farm Credit Corporation works, do you?
Just credit.
Okay.
Okay, and please don't provide information from the website that you're looking up now, Mr. Froelich.
Nope, no problem.
We'll hear from Mr. Neufeld if there's a significant change in banking practices from Farm Credit Union, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Okay. On page 43, you have an instrument 551446-1. That is the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading. No, that's the right one. That is the amending agreement. Sorry, the original mortgage 54420300/1.
What page is it?
43.
Okay,
That's the mortgage, correct?
43. Let me get to it, please. Yeah, see, so yeah, so that's the mortgage that they have. I don't know the details of the $50 million, but the point is it's there.
Okay. The question was, that's a mortgage registration, and then further below that was amended and changed to 70 million, correct?
Yes, I guess so, Mr. Neufeld.
Okay. What is a mortgage?
What's
Technically, what is a mortgage? Did you know, it's a registration, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you researched this registration to see how many properties are on this mortgage?
Like I said, Mr. Neufeld, I don't know the details of the 50 million and the $70 million. All I know is that the property owner had completed a sales mailer stating that they had purchased.
Okay, we're talking about the mortgage.
Let me finish, Mr. Neufeld.
I'm only asking about the mortgage.
Well, the point is, and I've answered that question, I don't know the details of the 50 and $70 million, but I do have the details of what they had, what your client had completed as a sales mailer service.
I understand. Now, do you understand how a mortgage works?
On some levels, yes. On other levels, no.
Can you put multiple properties on the same mortgage?
I don't want to speculate. I believe you can, but I don't want to speculate. All I know is what I learned this week is that we could have multi-role sales on properties that are not adjacent to each other. So that's something that we learned. But to answer your question with regards to the 50 million and $70 million, I don't know any of the details with regard to that, and any further questions would be redundant, sir.
Okay, so you never researched the other securities offered on this same mortgage then?
No, that's correct.
All right. And you do have the change to 50 million, or the original amount from 50 million, which coincides with the sale date, correct?
Correct.
And then you don't know if there were other securities involved in the advancement of mortgage funds.
That is correct.
Okay. I don't think I have any other new questions here. No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Colatruglio, questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I guess the first question I'm going to have is on page 30 of your brief. And it's a point I'm trying to understand, and I'll probably ask Mr. Neufeld similar questions. So page 30, where you have the information that was provided by the purchaser, correct?
Yes.
All right. So you stated here in line 22 of that page shows the sale price of $12,200,000. That is for the original 120,000 square foot of the building, correct? Of the site.
Correct.
Okay. Now, that also included the greenhouse, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you noted that it's 100% mortgaged through
Correct.
Farm Credit Corp, correct?
Yes.
And I also note a mortgage of 3.98%. That's a fairly low mortgage rate, is it not, sir?
Well, the point is, interest rates started moving up quite significantly in the summer of June 2022. So when
This is early in the year 22, correct?
exactly, so I think this would have been a good borrowing rate for a commercial property at the time, because there wasn't the major jump. The big jump in interest rates took place in the summer of 2022, and this original sale, if we look on the next page here, the sale was agreed upon on
In December.
2021. So
Yeah.
probably the financing was already done ahead of time, but
Yep.
interest are still low. And that's me just speculating. But the
Okay.
point is, in my analysis with regards to cap rates, because it was a contentious issue this time, and Mr. Neufeld and I had discussed this, it's just there weren't a lot of sales for industrial properties after the summer of 2022, because markets don't like instability, and it's just like what we have right now with regards to the political situation between Canada and the United States.
Mr. Froelich, can you please just stay on topic with respect to the question?
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, but the point is that the interest
no, I
rate.
believe I have my answer already, Mr. Froelich.
Okay.
Now,
Sorry.
moving on, Mr. Neufeld just touched on it briefly. Is it possible? And maybe Mr. Neufeld knows better than I do, or better than you do, sir, in that the mortgages that obviously showed on page 43, sorry, while I scroll down to that. Is it possible that the $50 million mortgage was for business that this company was already doing with Farm Credit and may include other properties? I'm just making that assumption, correct?
Yeah, you're making that assumption.
And then I'm also gonna make the assumption that the additional $20 million in mortgage that they took on at that point, is it possible that that might be for this purchase along with potentially fronting money for an addition that they were planning to do for this property? Is that possible?
That's very possible, which is why I was
But
asking.
you do not know that, correct?
Not know that.
Okay, I guess I'll have to ask Mr. Neufeld that question. Other than that, I believe those are my questions at this point, and I thank you very much for your presentation.
Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. What I had was asked and answered. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm just a little curious, Mr. Froelich, the change in cap rates from the previous property, the previous one at the amount stated at 6.55, and this is a 40 basis point drop to 6.15 over the course of that cycle. I realize this is model driven. That's correct, right? The cap rate's model driven?
Correct.
Is there an explanation for a 40 basis point drop in the capitalization rate?
Well, in our analysis, if you're looking at the reference dates that were taking place, so 2025 is April 1st, 2023, 2023 is April 1st, 2021. So then all of a sudden we're collecting the interest rate information for all the financing before April 1st, 2021. At that period of time, because of COVID and the fear of making sure that the Canadian economy, well, if I'm overstepping here, Mr. because this is our profession's very broad, and cap rates are related to macroeconomic issues here. Bank of Canada had a very aggressive policy with dropping interest rates, so that's subsequently seen that was taking place, between 2021 and 2023. So we were dealing with the sales that were taking place with a very low interest rate environment for 2025, which is why the cap rate dropped from 0.4% in our analysis.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Neufeld, your evidence, please.
I'm standing by what I submitted already. I don't have anything new for you. Save some time here. Nothing has changed. This does not move with the market. This moves on a issue of being a big building. So the value I revised in the prior one is the same one we're putting forward along with the points. I'm not sure if what I have to say is summation or verbal rebuttal, but I did have very brief comments.
Okay, perhaps save it for summation at this point, but I will ask if Mr. Froelich has any questions of you based on that submission, Mr. Froelich?
Yeah, my question is for Mr. Neufeld. What was the cap rate he used for the sale of $12,200,000 for this property?
What? Cap rate? Why would there be a
The
cap
point is
rate?
there was a sale for the property.
Yeah.
And usually if there's a sale, you do some analysis. So I'm just wondering if you
No. You need to have income for that. There was no income coming from here.
Well, but a lot of times, people speculate on potential income.
Oh, sure. But that's not appropriate methodology. That's incorrect. No one who's professionally accredited would do that.
Well, I've seen it in our profession.
Sure, I've seen it. I've seen it in assessment.
You don't know what the cap rate would have been for the sale, and so are you saying that the cap rate for the sale should be? I think your new number is 7.75%. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And wouldn't that derive in a higher cap rate, higher market rent than what you're?
No, I mean there's no connection between the two because the sale was predicated on a decision that was not investment based. It wasn't anything to do with the real estate. It had to do with the business. And I think that your display of the mortgages pretty much points out what their business is and what it's all about. It's a big business. It's chemicals.
Okay.
And it's all across the country. And they purchase the sites because they're looking for sites that they can store and repackage herbicides on. Those are very rare to find. Okay. And you get one, you got the size you want, you grab it. So that's not market.
Okay, so the owner for this property, are they knowledgeable with regards to is this one property that they've only purchased, or would they have a good understanding of market conditions across Canada? Would you be knowledgeable or not knowledgeable?
You're asking me to comment on people and that, and I don't think that's fair. I know what their purchase decisions were based on, and they were based on their business, not their real estate. That's as far as I took it. I said, I interviewed them. They purchased Eli. They purchased 167 Lawson. They purchased a site in Regina. They purchased a site in Airdrie, and they leased a site on Herbo, all in the last few years. And an additional one in Tillsonburg. So these weren't acquisitions driven by I got investment money and I want a rate of return on my real estate. They were based on I got contracts to remix chemicals. This is how much they're worth to me. I got to get some sites up and running and resale. They know there's no resale. They know that if they put this on the site, I had this conversation yesterday, and I said, what would happen if you put this on the site to sale? They said, we'd never recover that money. They know it.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
I have no questions, thanks.
Mr. Colatruglo.
Just wanted to confirm, value you're suggesting on this is the same for 2025 as it was for 2024, sir?
That is correct.
132, yes?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and I'd like to just ask you the question with respect to the information that we've seen in the assessor's brief with respect to the rate that the mortgage was.
I knew you were going to ask that.
Well,
Yeah.
and the reason being, Mr. Neufeld, you have said, and you went on at fair length earlier this morning with respect to how you felt when someone looking to mortgage a property similar to this would have to pay a premium in their mortgage rate. And yet I see a premium, I don't see that premium at a less than 4% mortgage rate on the entire building. So I'm not
Okay.
sure I can appreciate your earlier comments, sir, and I'd like to get your comments now, please.
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that, so I don't have to deal with it in rebuttal. I always can count on you. Now, the interest rate of 3.98% was actually pretty close to what a market rate would be at the time. At this time, Bank of Canada rate was at its all-time low. I think that was 0.25%. Yeah, and so we got 3.5 points, sorry, 3.75 points higher than the Bank of Canada rate, which, if you're taking a mortgage out at this time, one of my kids had a mortgage at 1.75%. So at 4% for this, it's a touch higher than market. Now, Farm Credit Corporation is different as well. You can also buy down your rates. They usually have a huge filing fee that they charge you, and then you buy down and lock in your mortgage. It's like CMHC financing. And this is a department of the government of Canada associated with BDC, the same concept. They only do farm-related work. Their mission statement is to make sure farmers and farm-related uses can get financing. And you'll notice that 100%, well, that's only because they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 properties across Canada on that same mortgage. And their value of their asset base, I mean, they got a 400,000 square foot warehouse or mixing place in Ontario. They have well over $200 million in assets. They've only got $70 million borrowed against it in total. That's a really poor ratio. And what they did is they advanced funds based on the strength of all of their other acquisitions and ownerships. And that is how it works. So it's not a fair analysis, because right away you look at 100%, you know that this is what we call creative financing. But the issue goes right back to what I said about contamination. They can't get mortgages from the Royal Bank or the Bank of Montreal or Nova Scotia. They got to go to Farm Credit. As the same with BDC, in our business, they're the lenders of last resort. I can't get money elsewhere. So they put up several $100 million of assets to get 70 million to acquire this site. Plus, I know there's another site they acquired at the same time, and this is how they reported it. I think it's extremely supportive of what I've been saying. And taken in isolation, of course, if you don't know how this works, it could be misleading. So I think it's, I didn't object to it. I thought it was supportive of our position. And I'm not spinning this. I'm not doing anything of the sort. This is creative financing supported by 11 sites across Canada that they're probably ratioed out at 25% overall to a corporation founded by the government of Canada to allow farmers to get financing because they couldn't get it from normal banks. And of course, contaminated properties wouldn't get traditional financing either.
But at the end of the day, you made the statement saying that they would pay a premium for these types of properties. I don't see a premium here, sir. I just don't.
Because this is taken out of context. Of course, there's a premium. They had a site that was fit their needs, that they could expand and grow into, and fit their business needs, and they had a source of financing through Farm Credit Corporation. This is standard business practice. To go
I don't disagree with that.
For a user company to go and say that this is an investment parameter is misleading. This is not an investment. This is a business, and this is again, it's an artificial construct by the federal government to assist farmers to get financing because they couldn't get it from normal banks. And that's what this tells us.
And as far as the difference in the mortgage from 50 million to 70 million, what are your comments on that? Is it possible that they mortgaged for the cost of the property that they bought here in Winnipeg? And did they add some monies to that for an addition that they were anticipating doing?
No, I think I'm just looking for the email, but they acquired a site in Alberta at the same time, or just shortly thereafter. They
And you think it was,
contacted.
they added one plus the other and just added it to the number?
They add another site onto it, so they needed more cash. So that was not anything to do with the cost of,
Right.
not directly with the cost of that. It was.
I
was
appreciate
another.
your answers to the questions. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Those are my questions.
Thank you. And I don't think I've got any additional questions other than what, and this is applying, of course, the evidence that was presented with respect to the first property we dealt with. So having said that, Mr. Froelich, do you have a summary for us? And it can deal with both properties since we skipped over that first one.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. So when we look at the sale of this property and our valuation process, there are many things for us to consider. One of the points that the applicant had brought out was the contaminated sale. So as in with most industrial properties, there's contamination that exists, but it doesn't prevent them from doing their necessary duties. You could go through the contamination list, and almost everyone will have be listed in St. Boniface Industrial Park in this neighborhood, and this is the case. I'd asked the question, and I was never provided an answer, but this property was purchased for $12,200,000, which included the mez space and the greenhouse. So despite the fact that the new owner or the applicant paid $12.2 million for that property, even though they weren't going to use it, the property still had value to them at the $12.2 million. And so that's just looking at the original building of 120,000 square feet with the additional greenhouse. With regards to I'd asked the applicant with regards to the breakdown of the property, like what proportion of the building would be the 1997 portion and the 2023 portion. There is no breakdown for this, but we do have a sale that's been registered with the provincial government for title search at $12,200,000 with a mortgage with FCC over the same amount. And then additionally, there was additional mortgages for $50 million for $50 million, and the second number passes me. So one could assume or make the assumption that building 120,000 square foot building with 28 square feet ceiling heights does not come cheaply, and some of those proceeds could have been used from the mortgage to finance the new construction. We have market rents that support that. Even though our market rent's lower, we believe that the market rents for this property has been underassessed. And that concludes my final presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, your summary, please.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, I just lost my screen here. Well, first touch on the concept of the sales. Now you got 2 sales at $50 a foot, 2 sales at $100 a foot. The board is now being asked to put some weight on one, but not the other. You can't do that. We know that. So that's your problem. But I think the bottom line here is we're doing it on the income approach, and you've got very different sales, like double values, and it doesn't follow the years at all. It's just, it is what it is, and it's what I'm saying. You're putting a big property up for sale. If you can find a perfect fit, you get a price. If you can't find a perfect fit, you don't. So the income's the way to go. And if you put weight on one sale, then you got to put weight on the other sale for the previous year. So again, I'll charge you with dealing with that, but I don't think you can do it. In regard to, there was that sales brochure. Now, what I was bringing up with that is, and I said earlier, appraisers, brokers, we don't report on that area. Now, you saw the clever way they handled it in the sales brochure. They put plus or minus, and then they put out the areas separately. So they're on in the gray area. But if, for example, you stop the assessor for bringing up the future transfer website, it says 100,000 feet is what they bought. So the world knows it's only 100,000 because that's all it's good for. You can't manufacture space and manufacture value by putting in a mezzanine, especially in industrial. You lose in the bottom. You saw the evidence on what they actually make. They got the 5-foot high liquid containers. That's their business. You build a mezz, you lose 2 whole rows or columns or whatever in it. You don't like that space, but you bought the building because it had other things that you liked. It had the space. Now, the greenhouse, that was it was on the site. It was never in operation. And it has no value, especially now. The owner will not rent it. He does not want an interfering use on his site because of the difference in uses. And on top of it, it has only salvage value. The cannabis, custom designed for cannabis. What's the cannabis business like? If the assessor thought it had value, he should have brought forward some information on that. But you saw the pictures. There's no value here. There's steel value, scrap value. And that was our position on it. The mortgage concept was, obviously it's, I really like Merrick. He's fun to deal with, but he should not have brought up the concept of mortgage because it's a registration. You've got multiple properties owned by the same person. You went to the mortgager of last resort to get financing. That's what I read into it, because you can't get financing from traditional banks because they don't like herbicide repackaging companies. And back to the main, we have an income approach. The mezzanine is not rentable area under anybody's definition. And another point, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier, all the comps that people use in their discussion don't put in the mezzanine space. So you're being asked to look at floor space of the main floor and extend that to the mezzanine. You need a specific mezzanine rent to prove that. And you know why you can't find one? Because they don't exist. And that's just another part of it. You don't create value by a remeasurement. You cut your value on the underside. The last issue being the cap rate. Well, there's no doubt that this has an environmental issue. And as I said earlier, how do I know? Because it stores herbicides. It's clear. There's no question about it. Now, the only thing I agree with the assessor slightly on is that the degree of impact in M3 zoning is not as severe as the degree of impact in other zonings, because there are fewer people who want M3 land than there are who want C2 land, and the M3 people will probably repollute. But the bottom line on that value is that there's still some degree of stigma because it's hard to get financing. The assessor proved that to us because they went to Farm Credit Corporation. And incidentally, that qualification list I sent out earlier, I did a lot of that work for Farm Credit. I'm not unfamiliar with their practices. And this is what they do. And they do a good service for Canadians because farmers can't get credit from normal banks. It's very difficult, or they get very low ratios. Farm Credit's mandate is to be of assistance, but it also proves that there's a problem in the normal marketing world. How many warehouses in Winnipeg can get approved for Farm Credit Corporation financing? Only those that are associated with agriculture, which are about 5. And that's that's called creative financing. So it's not market. You have to presume that this is being put on the market to be bought by a purchaser using normal financing. That's in the definition of value, market value, normal financing or normal considerations, and not creative financing. So you have to assume you're going to go to a bank. Your bank is going to nail you on the ratios, the the lease, the amortization and the interest rate because of the previous use. That's just real life. You're going to be faced with spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on an ongoing basis for doing test holes to prove that there's nothing there. And it doesn't matter if there's something there or if there isn't something there. This is about market perception of environmental. And this is what I work on forever. It doesn't matter if it's contaminated or not. And I'm going to use some very, very harsh words here, and I hope I don't insult anybody. But if you're a sex offender in Canada, you never get off the list. It's the same in an environmental. You have an environmental registration, you stay on the list forever. You're always going to be. And it's the analogy is spot on. And I apologize, it was a very crude analogy, but that is the nature of environmentally impacted properties. I think we did a pretty fair approach to it. Again, it's not what the business paid. It's not what they needed. This is to further their business, and this is a dirty business, but it's a necessary business in Canada that doesn't create market value. The concept is hypothetically put it up for sale. I got a contaminated building at 223,000 square feet. What am I going to get for it? And I think we focused on that clearly, and I don't think that the assessment department did. I think they forgot many things. And I thank you all for your wonderful patience today. And again, Merritt, always enjoyable.
Take care, Mr. Neufeld.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Froelich and Mr. Neufeld, for your presentations. Having heard all of the evidence and dealt with the matters on the docket today, we will conclude this hearing. Thank you again.
Gentlemen.
Mr. Chairperson, I'm just trying to log on to see why my system kicked me out, and it's just still working right now. So I just bear with